This video was brought to you by the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. No, I'm just kidding. It wasn't. Please don't sue me. I'm just joking. But you know, every time I upload a Mormon video, I get people commenting that they got an advertisement from the church before the video. So in a way, the church is funding my work, so they might as well sponsor me, right? Thank you, President Nelson. I love you, man.
I love you.
And yes, I am drinking a cup of coffee while I'm writing the script. Cheers.
Oh my God, bro.
Oh, hell.
Mormonism is one of the strangest offshoots of Christianity. Plural marriages, baptisms for the dead, sacred underwear. But today we're going to talk about one of the strangest doctrines in Mormonism, the ban on coffee, or more specifically, hot drinks, which are interpreted to mean coffee and any type of non-herbal tea. Why did Joseph Smith speak against hot drinks in the first place, and how do modern members of the LDS Church rationalize this rather arbitrary prohibition? To understand the ban on coffee and tea, we have to go back to the 1800s. Most of you are probably familiar with the Book of Mormon, which was divinely revealed to Joseph Smith as another testament of Jesus Christ. But the Bible and the Book of Mormon are not the only books included in the LDS canon. We also have the Pearl of Great Price and Doctrine and Covenants. All of these are fascinating, but we're gonna focus on the last one. According to the official LDS website, Doctrine and Covenants was revealed to Joseph Smith in 1833, and it was to serve as a sort of instruction manual for Latter-day Saints. So back in the 1830s in Kirtland, Ohio, Joseph Smith started this thing called the School of the Prophets, which consisted of 25 dudes who came together to talk about their religion. Now, Joseph observed some of the early brethren were using tobacco in their meetings, and that led him to write section 89 of Doctrine and Covenants. Smith promised that anyone who follows the guidelines in this revelation shall receive health in their navel and marrow to their bones, and shall find wisdom and great treasures of knowledge. Wow, sounds pretty cool, right? Also, the destroying angel will pass over you and not destroy you. Pretty intense. DNC 89 tells the saints to avoid drinking alcohol. The only time it's acceptable to make wine is for use in the sacrament, which is funny because modern LDS use water instead of wine. But that's another conversation. Strong drinks are not for the belly, but for the washing of your bodies. Were people washing themselves with wine back then? Was that a thing? If I bathe myself in tequila, is that cool with Heavenly Father? These are serious questions, guys. The next verse tells us that tobacco is not good for the body and should be used only to treat bruises and to treat cattle. So the thing is, when Joseph Smith wrote the Doctrine and Covenants, it wasn't meant to be taken as a strict commandment. It was more like a general guideline, because Smith and his contemporaries still drank alcohol every now and then. It was only later prophets that stressed the importance of obeying the DNC to the letter. So Mormons today don't drink or smoke, and more modern prophets have also spoken against drug abuse. And that makes sense because tobacco and drug abuse is not good. And let's be real, alcohol is technically a type of drug as well. But the next line is what really throws me off. And again, hot drinks are not for the body or belly. Later Mormon prophets would interpret hot drinks to refer specifically to coffee and tea. But why would Smith ban these things? You see, Joseph Smith was inspired by the temperance movements of the early 1800s. A fresh wave of religious fervor was sweeping through America, and temperance movements seek to limit or even ban the consumption of alcohol. Other religious figures were inspired by the temperance movement, such as Ellen G. White, prophetess of the Seventh-day Adventist Church, who on top of speaking against alcohol, also advocated for a vegetarian diet. Mormonism was born in this ultra-religious temperance environment. Now, some Mormons today might tell you that the reason Joseph Smith banned hot drinks is because of the caffeine. And there is a lot to say about caffeine addiction, to be fair. I think it's one of the most normalized addictions we have in our society.
Is there any more coffee?
But the LDS Church doesn't prohibit caffeine consumption. It never did. From what I understand, caffeinated drinks like sodas used to be frowned upon back in the 80s, but it wasn't like an outright prohibition, it was more like a cultural taboo. But not anymore though, because from what I've heard, there's a very rich soda culture in Utah, especially in Salt Lake. And Brigham Young University, a university owned by the LDS Church, sells soda as well. You know, it's funny. Mormons will avoid a cup of joe like the plague, but will happily down a few cans of Monster. So I propose a different theory on why Joseph Smith banned coffee and tea. You might find it interesting. It was basically out of spite. Remember how I told you that Joe and his buddies would get together in the school of the prophets? Well, Emma Smith, Joseph's first wife, would complain that the early brethren drank alcohol and chewed tobacco during their meetings, and she would be left cleaning up after them. Tobacco spit leaves a huge stain on the floors, and it's really hard to get off. It was a mess. After complaining to her husband, Joseph Smith was left pondering what to do, and he said, okay, no more alcohol or tobacco, but as a way to get back at his wife, he also banned hot drinks. Because what did ladies do when they wanted to socialize and discuss social issues? Get together for coffee or tea. It was Smith's way of saying, if you're not gonna let my friends consume stuff they enjoy, I will also limit what you and your friends can drink. Now keep in mind, this is only a theory that has been brought up by some members. It might or might not be true, but it kind of makes sense to me. Because it's just so strange. No other religious movement I'm aware of has ever had a similar ban on hot drinks, on coffee and tea. It seems to be straight out of Joseph Smith's imagination, but then again, he was quite a creative fellow.
You see? You believe it now?
Well, yeah, sure. Why would he make that up?
Dum 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 dum.
But the bottom line is, the no coffee rule doesn't have to make sense. It's simply a test of loyalty. It was never about the coffee itself, or the temperature of the drink, or even the caffeine. It was all about obedience. For a Mormon, drinking coffee means disobeying Joseph Smith, and by extension, Heavenly Father. Drinking coffee won't just get you reprimanded by God in the final judgment, like, hey, you know, why would you drink coffee? Why would you disobey me? No, it can even disqualify you from entering the temple, from being temple worthy. And if you're not temple worthy, you can't be in the celestial kingdom with your family. You think I'm exaggerating? Just listen to this talk given in the April 2007 General Conference by Julie Beck, President of the Relief Society.
My next story is about a woman I'll call Mary. She was the daughter of faithful pioneer parents who had sacrificed much for the gospel. She'd been married in the temple and was the mother of 10 children. She was a talented woman who taught her children how to pray, to work hard, and to love each other. She paid her tithing, and the family rode to a church together on Sunday in their wagon. Though she knew it was contrary to the word of wisdom, she developed the habit of drinking coffee and kept a coffee pot on the back of her stove. She claimed that the Lord will not keep me out of heaven for a little cup of coffee. But because of that little cup of coffee, she could not qualify for a temple recommend. And neither could those of her children who drank coffee with her. She lived to a good old age, and she did eventually qualify to re-enter and serve in the temple. But only one of her 10 children had a worthy temple marriage, and a great number of her posterity, which is now in its 5th generation, live outside of the blessings of the restored gospel she believed in and her forefathers sacrificed so much for.
Now, to us, it may seem like any other drink, but to an indoctrinated Latter-day Saint, drinking coffee means rejecting God Himself. These religions always resort to a slippery slope fallacy, where even the most mundane of habits can lead to disastrous spiritual consequences. This woman in the experience didn't take the coffee prohibition seriously, and she ended up destroying the spirituality of 9 of her children, and thus their chance to live in heaven as an eternal family. That's why Julie Beck is getting so emotional here. To her, this tragedy could have been avoided only if that lady would have been obedient, even in the small details. Not considering for a second that her children could have just realized they were in a cult, and coffee had nothing to do with it.
You must not let one little cup of coffee, One bad habit, one bad choice, one wrong decision derail us for a lifetime.
This commenter put it perfectly. It's not about the coffee, it's about getting into people's heads and controlling them from the inside. Just another one of their little devices. I've seen them down plenty of Mountain Dew. Mountain Dew is much worse for you than coffee, but at least you'll still earn your salvation. And that's the word of wisdom. Pretty awesome. Yep, Mountain Dew is like literal poison, but Heavenly Father doesn't seem to mind. And another funny detail, the word of wisdom also commands people to eat meat sparingly, but I've never ever heard a Mormon emphasize that verse. Oh, but it gets worse because it turns out that the story about Mary probably never even happened at all. Like this smart commenter pointed out. Let's see, supposedly this person, Mary, couldn't get a temple recommend because she drank coffee. She rode her wagon and this was 5 generations ago. But the word of wisdom wasn't a requirement for temple attendance until after 1921. And even then, it took a while for it to be strictly enforced. When the pioneers made the trek to Utah in 1847, the list of required items for each wagon included coffee. This is obviously a fake story. Yep, I'm totally not surprised that the story is made up. Jehovah's Witnesses also spread fantastical stories, cautionary tales, in order to scare members into compliance. Julie Beck could have easily fact-checked this story, but she doesn't care about the facts. She cares about the narrative. Of course, Mormons are not the only ones who make a huge fuss over these seemingly minor infractions. Jehovah's Witnesses do the same thing. In the religion I grew up in, you couldn't celebrate birthdays, or salute the flag, or say bless you after someone's sneezes, and until very recently, growing a beard was looked down upon. None of these rules were based on the Bible, nor did they make any coherent sense. The whole purpose of these rules is to separate you from the rest of the world, to draw a sharp line between the believer and the outsider. Every religion has these kinds of rules. It's just the less widespread they are, the sillier they will seem. Bonding over a cup of coffee or tea is an almost universal experience. Hell, if you've ever been to the Middle East or to Turkey, the people there drink a lot of tea. Every time a Latter-day Saint has to turn down coffee or tea, they are reminded that they're supposed to be separate from the world. As dedicated servants of God or social pariahs, the effect is just the same. And a lot of Latter-day Saints are aware of how silly the coffee ban sounds to outsiders, and some brave souls have tried to explain their position, bring a bit of logic into it. This is Saints Unscripted, a Mormon apologist channel, and look at what they have to say about the coffee ban.
But why coffee and tea? Well, there's a lot of speculation about that. We Latter-day Saints, first, are very cautious of addictive substances, so some people assert that we must not be able to drink coffee and tea because the caffeine in them is a stimulant and can be addictive.
Is there any more coffee?
That's a good theory and may have something to do with it, though it's led to a misconception that Latter-day Saints can't drink soda that has caffeine in it, which isn't the case. The Revelation also says it was given in consequence of evils and designs which do and will exist in the hearts of conspiring men in the last days. This calls to mind stories of Big Tobacco and other companies working overtime to get you addicted to their products, and leaves the door open to those kinds of possibilities right now or in the future. Will something or is something like this happening with tea and coffee right now? I don't know. When it comes right down to it, I don't know exactly why we're asked not to drink coffee or tea. But I believe Joseph Smith was a prophet, so I'm not gonna drink it.
Bruh. You know what? I low-key appreciate this dude's honesty. He just told us that he obeys the word of wisdom, not because he's convinced of the reasonable guidelines in it, but because he believes Joseph Smith is a prophet. It's faith. Sure, he tries to sneak in some room for plausibility, like, oh, could it be that coffee producers are plotting behind their backs to get us addicted to coffee? Like, no dude, we've been hooked on coffee for centuries now. There's no conspiracy. You see, when our religious beliefs don't make much sense, we often invent conspiracies that justify them. And then another strategy is to bring up a Bible story that vaguely serves your narrative, and then use that to justify your stance.
When it comes to tea and coffee, many people outside our faith pass our belief off as blind, mindless obedience. Hopefully we'd disagree. We'd call it faith obedience. We have faith that it's instruction that God currently would like us to live by, even if we don't understand why. That rhyme.
I find all of this deeply ironic. This channel is dedicated to explaining why Mormonism is true, why it's logical, why it makes sense to be a Latter-day Saint. But at the same time, this dude is happy with obeying the word of wisdom even when it doesn't make sense. What's the point of doing apologetics if when confronted by logic, you just put your hands up in the air and say, it's all about faith? If you can resort to faith every time you don't have an exit strategy, then what is the point of logic? In that case, you can use faith to justify literally any type of belief system. I'm sorry, but it's dumb. He knows we know it's dumb, but he's not allowed to say it because it's against his religion. Latter-day Saints are not allowed to drink coffee even if they don't find the word of wisdom convincing. There is no room for disagreement. And look, I have nothing against the guys in Saints Unscripted. They seem like genuinely sweet people. But that's what sucks about this. Otherwise reasonable people willing to overlook the flaws in their own religion. And you know what the worst part of all of this is? All of this is subject to change. If the prophet of the church wakes up tomorrow and says, "Hey guys, God has revealed to me that it's now cool to drink coffee," every LDS would be free to drink it. This is not just a hypothetical. They've done it in the past with lifting the ban on black people entering the temple and with polygamy. Today's revelation is tomorrow's outdated doctrine. Will the church ever change their stance on coffee? I don't see that happening because every time they made big changes in the past is because the government has threatened their legal status or their tax exempt status, and banning coffee doesn't really have a effect on that. It's very minor. But who knows, maybe our friend Nelson or whichever of his buddies succeeds him, maybe one day they'll fall face first upon a cup of espresso, and then they'll fall in love with coffee, and the next day he's gonna get a revelation from God that coffee is okay. Just like Joseph Smith received a revelation from God that taking multiple wives was perfectly fine. It would not be the strangest thing that happened in this religion.
Many people believe Joseph, dum 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 dum.
So, if you're a current or former member of the LDS Church, please let me know what you think of the coffee ban. Do you find it logical? Does it even matter? Let me know in the comments below. Guys, as always, a big thank you to my Patreons and my YouTube channel members for your support. If you appreciate my channel and would like to gain early access to all my videos, please head on over to Patreon or become a channel member. This work would not be possible without you. Thank you so much. Take it easy, guys. Have a wonderful day and stay away from double espressos.
Bah. Goodbye, little sheep.